another, they had expected to be horrified, but couldn't be prepared for what they saw. Lieutenant Colonel Craig King led what was called the sweep team. His job was to find survivors, to recover the dead, and to make a record of what happened.
The first little hamlet that we came to was, we deployed the infantry out to form a cordon. We had the engineers go in to check for mines and to ensure that the structures were safe to enter. And then we started, calling for people. And there was no one.
Let's keep it down! Try your floating. He's Sergeant there!
By nightfall, Craig King's sweep team found the first 2 bodies.
More light in here? Yeah, we're going to hear it just as soon as they get in there. Can you stand back from the doorway there?
They were in a terrible state, and if you've ever smelled burnt flesh, you'll never forget it the rest of your life. And it was a very sad event taking them out of there. The body parts were sort of strewn about. This is we probably shouldn't talk about that. Yeah, give me a minute, will you? Okay. Sure.
The Canadians had found the bodies of what appeared to be teenaged girls. At times they had to douse them with bottled water to reduce the heat.
We loaded them, charred and all, into these body bags, and I think their remains were still so hot that they melted some of the plastic. The guys were handling them with gloves and everything like that, and there were bits falling off as we were loading them in. It was horrific. My driver used a whisk broom and a scoop that we had in the Jeep to pick up some of the fingers and things like that. I mean, it was goddamn awful.
After, once we moved in,
Mike Spellin went through the woods looking for survivors, but found only corpses, mostly older men and women, but at least one Serb soldier.
And once we decided there was no booby traps, when we turned this one young guy over, he would have been probably about mid-20s, maybe 25, 27 years of age. And they had tortured this guy before they eye shot him. But I remember when they turned him over, there was a little chain trinket. The chain was running through his fingers. And when we turned him over, I pulled the hand open. And what he had done, if you can imagine probably what he went through his last minutes of life, in there he probably had this chain around his neck, and he had pulled it off and clenched it in his fist, and then he never was surprised that they probably see it. But he was clenching this chain, no doubt, before he got executed. And what it was 2 hearts that were overlapped. So it was probably from a girlfriend or his wife or something that he was clinging to in his last moments of his life.
Did we save everybody's lives that were in there? No, we didn't. It's always been a bit of a sore point too, but we couldn't have done anything any faster than what we did. We reacted much quicker than we were the only unit to react.
Major Dan Drew led Mike Spellin's company.
To witness the results of ethnic cleansing is mind-numbing. I mean, you're talking about old women and men butchered and murdered, tortured, little girls tied to chairs and burned to death. You're talking about all the animals, being burned alive in their barns or shot out in the field. the area being booby-trapped, the water table being poisoned by throwing bodies down wells and then putting rocks on top of them so they can't float to the surface, and then pouring oil in on top of that. The destruction of every building in a region, every building. The roofs blown off, windows knocked out, burned, all demolished, that kind of stuff. That's what ethnic cleansing is. It's horrific. It's a moonscape in the end.
Croatian President Franjo Tuđman was very aware of what was happening in Medak. It was in part revenge for what the Serbs had done to them. But transcripts of Tuđman's cabinet meetings, released after his death, reveal that he considered the Serbs living in Croatia a national problem that must be eliminated. Croatia must resolve the problem by war, said Tuđman, by ethnically cleansing the Serbs from Croatia. Croat General Janko Babetka reports to Tuđman that they have successfully cleansed the area. We turned over 52 usable Serb bodies, says Babetka, but the general is alarmed that perhaps the peacekeepers discovered bodies they weren't supposed to. It could be that Umprofor entered a little too fast, says Babetka. He admits there were bodies hidden in the woods.
We found a total of 16 bodies, I think. We found evidence that there was probably more, because in the woods we would see large sort of patches of blood and surgical gloves, which suggests that maybe bodies or something had been dumped there. I don't know.
The Canadian soldiers stayed for several more weeks, always hoping that someone had survived, someone would come back. No one did. The Princess Patricias gave everything they had defending the villages of Medak Pocket. When they left Croatia several weeks later, at least they thought they'd done all that was possible. It would take years before they realized just how much of themselves they had given here in Medak.
My reservists, they went straight from, hell back into the normal world. They went from 150 miles an hour to zero in a heartbeat. And these guys, as soon as they hit the ground, they were basically given a paycheck and sent on their way.
When we come back, the Battle of Medak Pocket, the home front. In October 1993, the 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricias came home. They went from the scenes of a massive crime into the arms of loved ones in a flash. Many were scattered out across the country in a matter of hours and had little contact again. They couldn't compare notes or symptoms.
But soon after, once the initial euphoria of being back in Canada wears off, then we start thinking a lot about what happened and what we saw, what we observed.
How did it affect you?
Sleepless nights, irritability, a sense of being very lethargic.
I was, edgy. I was irritable. I was lacking patience. We have young children, and it was expressing itself in that way. And
Mike Spellin soon ended his 25-year career as a soldier.
I hit 25 and I just got out. One-liner to who it may concern, and give my 30 days notice. And a lot of people were surprised because I'd be there to this day. But I had stuff going on with me I didn't know about. I was having nightmares. I wasn't sleeping properly, and I didn't realize at the time, but when I look back, I totally was disconnecting from my family.
Canadian peacekeepers came home with war stories to tell. Stories of what they had done, what they had witnessed, and how it had changed them. They were stories both of courage and of horror. But they couldn't get much of an audience. Defense officials didn't want to hear what had happened in the Medak Pocket. In fact, quite the opposite.
I believe there was a conscious choice in the senior leadership in the department at that point in time to, in a sense, sacrifice the long-term well-being of this group of people for the sake of the reputation and the image of the Canadian Forces at the time.
Joe Sharp is a retired brigadier general, formerly with the Canadian Air Force. He studied the effects of stress on soldiers who served in Medak Pocket. Sharp believes the Defense Department wanted to keep the story of Medak Pocket a secret from Canadians.
The fact that the Canadians rescued the UN man